Good morning, everyone, from sunny San Francisco. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Ben Lorica. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at O'Reilly Media and Program Director for the Strata Conferences. I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. Our speaker today is Karen Hsu from Datameer. With over 15 years of experience in enterprise software, Karen has co-authored 4 patents and worked in a variety of engineering, marketing, and sales roles. Most recently, she came from Informatica, where she worked with startups Informatica purchased to bring data quality, master data management, and data security solutions to market. Karen has a bachelor's degree in management science and engineering from Stanford University. I'll turn over the program to Karen in a moment, but first let me go over a few housekeeping things to help you get the most out of today's webcast. First, you'll want to open the group chat widget if you haven't already done so. This is where we'll interact with each other during the event and where you'll submit your questions for Karen. We find that our audience usually has a lot of good questions, so we encourage you to chat freely during the event. If you have questions for Karen, please preface them with the capital letter Q, so we'll know that it's for her, and we can make sure that we get to it during the Q&A. You can also open, move, and resize any of the other widgets. If you're on Twitter and would like to tweet, there's also a Twitter widget. You'll need to give it permission to access your account. Our hashtag today is StrataConf, all one word, and the Twitter widget will automatically append that to your tweets, so you don't have to. If you have problems during the event, we encourage you to look at the help widget, which is very thorough. If you continue to have problems, post in the chat room, and someone in our staff will help you. For choppy audio or stalled visuals, try refreshing your window. And also, today's webcast is going to be recorded and archived, and usually it's ready to be viewed in 48 hours. So at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Karen for her presentation. So hello, Karen Hsu from Datameer.
Hello, Ben, and thank you so much for hosting this webinar with us. And on this webinar, what we'll cover first are the challenges that we have talked about before with you, Ben, as well as our customers, and then from there on, talk about the lean analytics process in response to those challenges. Then we'll discuss the technology as an approach to address these challenges, and then finally, a demonstration. And we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So first of all, we'd like to discuss the challenges in the analytics process, and in particular from the data scientist point of view as well as from the analyst point of view. And thank you, Ben, for spending a lot of time with us on this subject as well as blogging about this. We have discussed that this process goes from being able to acquire data, ingest data, store that data and manage it, then wrangle the data or prepare the data so that you can have the data ready for analysis. And then in the analysis, be able to visualize the analysis, interact through queries or other methods to analyze the data, and finally be able to model the data in terms of building the model, deploying, and so forth, and then telling the story at the end and sharing that story with your customers or with your partners. So this process is long and it can be complex. And what makes it more difficult is that there are many different tools on the market that address slices of this process. That's the first issue, so the fact that there are multiple tools. The second issue is that it is difficult to reproduce results, and that's because when you have the data in different tools, when you have different tools to manage, when you're coding, you have to then somehow figure out a way to pull this together and then reproduce the results. But that's something that's very difficult for the data scientist as well as the analyst. And then finally, a lot of these tools, because they have been early to market and have been so technically oriented, they aren't business friendly. And what we're seeing in the market today from customers and talking to you, Ben, is that we need a solution that is business driven because it is the subject matter expert that understands how to deal with these issues and really is closest to the data and can make sense and get value from that data. So this is the process that we have seen, and we encourage you to, through the chat window, ask questions. We also encourage you to continue this conversation with us on these challenges and give us your feedback on these challenges per the hashtags and the Twitter handles that you see below and on each side. So to address these challenges, Datameer has been working with hundreds of customers to implement an analytics process, and in particular, a lean analytics process. And this analytics process maps directly to the data scientist workflow that you see here. And that involves first being able to identify the use case that is going to be fit for this particular customer in this project, integrate the data that's necessary to support this use case, prepare the data for analysis, analyze the data, visualize and present those results, and then finally deploy into production and the rest of the company. Now, this process, you will see map to the best practices here. And this lean analytics process is one that, which we want to emphasize, is iterative in the part in the middle, right? And that is because being able to integrate, prepare, analyze, and visualize in an iterative fashion is absolutely critical to getting the answers that you want. And this, for a data scientist, this for an analyst, is very important, and that is why it is so important to be able to do in one tool, and it's difficult when you have multiple tools that are addressing each one of these parts. So what we'll show you today is how you can address, number one, this iterative process, and number two, address that iterative process and really do that analysis on all your data, and that's where leveraging Hadoop comes in. So at this point, what we'd like to do is shift to our first polling question. And our first polling question is, what part of the life cycle are you most interested in hearing about? Developing use cases, integration, preparation of the data, analysis, visualization, deployment. And this will help us understand where your interests are and focus the rest of the presentation as well as any kind of follow-up that we do with you.
Good morning, everyone, from sunny San Francisco. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Ben Lorica. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at O'Reilly Media and Program Director for the Strata Conferences. I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. Our speaker today is Karen Hsu from Datameer. With over 15 years of experience in enterprise software, Karen has co-authored 4 patents and worked in a variety of engineering, marketing, and sales roles. Most recently, she came from Informatica, where she worked with startups Informatica purchased to bring data, data quality, master data management, and data security solutions to market. Karen has a bachelor's degree in management science and engineering from Stanford University. I'll turn over the program to Karen in a moment, but first let me go over a few housekeeping things to help you get the most out of today's webcast. First, you'll want to open the group chat widget if you haven't already done so. This is where we'll interact with each other during the event and where you'll submit your questions for Karen. We find that our audience usually has a lot of good questions, so we encourage you to chat freely during the event. If you have questions for Karen, please preface them with the capital letter Q, so we'll know that it's for her, and we can make sure that we get to it during the Q&A. You can also open, move, and resize any of the other widgets. If you're on Twitter and would like to tweet, there's also a Twitter widget. You'll need to give it permission to access your account. Our hashtag today is StrataConf, all one word, and the Twitter widget will automatically append that to your tweets so you don't have to. If you have problems during the event, we encourage you to look at the help widget, which is very thorough. If you continue to have problems, post in the chat room, and someone in our staff will help you. For choppy audio or stalled visuals, try refreshing your window. And also, today's webcast is going to be recorded and archived, and usually it's ready to be viewed in 48 hours. So at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Karen for her presentation. So hello, Karen Hsu from Datameer.
Hello, Ben, and thank you so much for hosting this webinar with us. And on this webinar, what we'll cover first are the challenges that we have talked about before with you, Ben, as well as our customers, and then from there on, talk about the lean analytics process in response to those challenges. Then we'll discuss the technology as an approach to address these challenges, and then finally, a demonstration. And we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So first of all, we'd like to discuss the challenges in the analytics process, and in particular from the data scientist point of view as well as from the analyst point of view. And thank you, Ben, for spending a lot of time with us on this subject as well as blogging about this. We have discussed that this process goes from being able to acquire data, ingest data, store that data and manage it, then wrangle the data or prepare the data so that you can have the data ready for analysis. And then in the analysis, be able to visualize the analysis, interact through queries or other methods to analyze the data, and finally be able to model the data in terms of building the model, deploying, and so forth, and then telling the story at the end and sharing that story with your customers or with your partners. So this process is long and it can be complex. And what makes it more difficult is that there are many different tools on the market that address slices of this process. That's the first issue, so the fact that there are multiple tools. The second issue is that it is difficult to reproduce results, and that's because when you have the data in different tools, when you have different tools to manage, when you're coding, you have to then somehow figure out a way to pull this together and then reproduce the results. But that's something that's very difficult for the data scientist as well as the analyst. And then finally, a lot of these tools, because they have been early to market and have been so technically oriented, they aren't business friendly. And what we're seeing in the market today from customers and talking to you, Ben, is that we need a solution that is business driven because it is the subject matter expert that understands how to deal with these issues and really is closest to the data and can make sense and get value from that data. So this is the process that we have seen, and we encourage you to, through the chat window, ask questions. We also encourage you to continue this conversation with us on these challenges and give us your feedback on these challenges per the hashtags and the Twitter handles that you see below and on each side. So to address these challenges, Datameer has been working with hundreds of customers to implement an analytics process, and in particular, a lean analytics process. And this analytics process maps directly to the data scientist workflow that you see here. And that involves first being able to identify the use case, that is going to be fit for this particular customer in this project, integrate the data that's necessary to support this use case, prepare the data for analysis, analyze the data, visualize and present those results, and then finally deploy into production and the rest of the company. Now, this process, you will see mapped to the best practices here. And this lean analytics process is one that, which we want to emphasize, is iterative in the part in the middle, right? And that is because being able to integrate, prepare, analyze, and visualize in an iterative fashion is absolutely critical to getting the answers that you want. And this, for a data scientist, this for an analyst, is very important, and that is why it is so important to be able to do in one tool, and it's difficult when you have multiple tools that are addressing each one of these parts. So what we'll show you today is how you can address, number one, this iterative process, and number two, address that iterative process and really do that analysis on all your data, and that's where leveraging Hadoop comes in. So at this point, what we'd like to do is shift to our first polling question. And our first polling question is, what part of the lifecycle are you most interested in hearing about? Developing use cases, integration, preparation of the data, analysis, visualization, deployment. And this will help us understand where your interests are and focus the rest of the presentation, as well as any kind of follow-up that we do with you. So let's take a look at the results. So it looks like a lot of you are interested in the visualization, and that's great because that's exactly what we'll discuss in this session. So now let's go back to our presentation. Thank you for sharing, and we'll continue along the process of lean analytics. And the first step in that process is to be able to identify this use case. Now, what Datameer offers is a library of use cases that are documented not only on our website, but also in the materials we have. And these use cases, and some of the examples are seen here, such as funnel optimization, behavior analytics, and so forth, each have a business solution or business or metric associated with it. So in this way you can see what the business as well as technical benefits are for each use case. Along with each use case, we have then visualizations that can help you understand where you're going to end up and also the value that you can derive from that use case. So an example you see here, there's a visualization of click paths, and we'll also show you how you get to this visualization in our demonstration. But as a preview, this visualization shows you where people are coming in on your site and where they're going to from page to page. Now the next phase of this process is integration. And this is a critical part that many of our customers struggle with initially, because this is coming from where I came from before Datameer, and that is Informatica, was a very difficult issue. And that's because of the unstructured data as well as structured data that needs to be integrated. Now, what Datameer and other solutions provide, and what you should look for in an analytic solution, is a way of doing coldest data integration. And that includes, in this example, being able to take advantage of pre-built connectors to all of the unstructured as well as structured data sources. Datameer has over 55 connectors, many of which for unstructured data sources such as Facebook, websites, Google Analytics, and so forth, as well as structured data sources, whether it's coming from Marketo, Salesforce, SaaS solutions, databases, and other files. Now, as an example, Machine Zone, who's a customer of ours, uses this integration capability to also partition the data and segment the data to the point of what they're looking for in particular. And that's the graphic you see on the right, and what I'll also run through in the demo. And that is a visualization that you can see right at the beginning of the process, and one that makes the analyst's life and my life, for example, a lot easier, because I can quickly get to the data that I want to get to for whatever analysis I want to do. And the next step of the process is being able to prepare the data. And as part of preparing the data, for those of you who are familiar with data warehouses, there are a number of metrics that people typically go through or look at when they are starting to profile the data and understand whether or not the data is ready for analysis. And that includes being able to understand if the data is unique. For example, no entity exists more than once within the data set, such as a customer must appear once and only once in that data set. Accuracy is critical in terms of being able to measure how values agree with an identified source of correct information. Consistency is critical because you need to be able to understand how two values from separate data sets must not conflict with each other. For example, within a corporate hierarchy structure, the sum of the number of employees at each site should not exceed the number of employees for the entire corporation, as well as completeness, being able to identify and make sure that mandatory attributes have a value. And then finally, duplicates, making sure that you don't have unnecessary duplicative information, because that will skew your analysis. Now, as an example, and as we go through and show you in the demonstration, you're able to first profile the data. And as you can see on the far left, that gives you the ability to measure cardinality, to identify uniqueness. It allows you to identify duplicates, where you can compare the row count and cardinality. And so, for example, if the cardinality of the customer ID is less than the row count, then there are duplicates. You can identify accuracy by looking at the min-max and average of the values, and this is all visually done for you automatically at each step of your analysis. You can also identify consistency as well as completeness by looking at a histogram of the data. Now, these are all important things to do while you're profiling the data, just to understand whether your data is ready for analysis. And our customers use Datameer on a daily basis to do this type of preparation. One of our customers is a large bank that needed to comply with regulations like Basel III, and they had to gather data from many different sources for over 300 attributes. So they were profiling and they were preparing data for 300 attributes. And these attributes were metrics that needed to be complied with the Basel III regulation. So with Datameer, they were able to standardize their data and increase the quality of their data, whereas before, using other tools, it would take them hours, more like days, to do the same thing. They could do it with much less time with Datameer, and it allowed them to comply with that critical regulation. So now let's go on to the next step of analysis, and this is where Datameer offers an interactive spreadsheet, and other tools may offer different interfaces, but we have found that the analyst really can use the spreadsheet and leverage that experience they have with Excel and ramp up very quickly. And so you can see here as an example, the interactive spreadsheet offers not only the interface that's familiar, but the functions, the pre-built functions, that allow them to quickly do the preparation, do the analysis they need to. Datameer also offers smart analytics, and this is the data mining capabilities such as clustering, column dependencies, decision tree, as well as predictive capabilities around recommendations to further complete their analysis. Now finally, what's really important in the analysis is, and this is something we discussed with Ben, is the collaboration and the governance and the transparency. Now, it's great to create an analysis, but if no one understands it, or if you can't go back and understand what you did, it's of no use or less use. So what you see up there in the upper right-hand corner is a view of the data and the data lineage in particular. So you can see how the analysis was created, where it started, what steps were needed beforehand, and therefore follow every step of the process that you took or that the other person took to end up with those results. Now, as an example of a customer who's done this, we have many customers who have done this similar thing, but one customer is focused on reducing ad impression costs on their website. And by using Datameer, they're able to reduce ad impression costs by $1 million. And they were able to reduce these ad impression costs because they first had to manage a number of impressions across the various content partners. And the vendor that they used managed on which sites and networks these ads got posted. So using Datameer, they were able to identify the cookies that yielded the most revenue and therefore reduce the spend on cookies accordingly and saved $1 million a year. To do this, using Datameer, they use a spreadsheet interface like you see here to pull together the data and rank the ad impression data. They also use Datameer, rank the ad impressions by site. And then for a particular website, they could drill down on the behavior of that website, which I'll show you later on in the demonstration, and they could see what people were doing and what they were looking at on each page of the registration process or, say, the application process for a particular product or an offering. And in this way, they could answer the questions of what pages were visited within a session, as well as what were the top number of ad impressions by page by site. So now let's go to the next phase of the process, which is being able to visualize and create those visualizations once you have done this analysis. These are some examples of the visualizations that Datameer provides, including click paths, page views, and we support these views on mobile as well as various other devices that you see here. And as an example, we have customers who share their data and share these visualizations not only with their partners, but through an external site with their partners so they can see this information in an aggregate view for their customers. And so this is a way that companies share this information internally but also externally. Now, as an example, we have a telecommunications customer who is looking to save with Datameer $150 million in capital expenditures. And part of the reason why they wanted to use Datameer was to be able to visually show in an interactive way clustering and geographic heat map capabilities where they should save in these capital expenditures. And the problem first comes from the fact that they needed to be able to meet existing and forecasted demand but not have excess capacity resulting in inflated capital expenditures. So they needed to balance these two things, and using Datameer, they were able to do that analysis but also share that visualization. And then after you're able to visualize, then the ability to deploy becomes important. And again, in this deployment step, being able to visualize what's going on during your deployment job by job is extremely important. So there's security that's important as part of deployment scheduling, where you need to be able to configure when jobs kick off, set dependency triggers without coding, but also be able to monitor every aspect of your jobs. And as you can see here, be able to see when ad hoc jobs are being performed versus scheduled jobs. So if you were in an environment where you'd have to create a shell script every time you wanted to see these things, it'd be a lot more difficult. But you also see more of those ad hoc jobs in orange on the far left-hand side as opposed to the green ones, which are scheduled. You can also see the jobs day by day by job type. So this helps you to understand the types of jobs, how to optimize them, and whether it's an actual analysis you're doing, an import, export, and so forth. So as an example, a security company uses Datameer to do this kind of analysis and then therefore be able to optimize what they need to do in their services for ensuring security for their customers. And as part of deployment, and one critical thing that we have found with people using Hadoop is being able to take this deployment and make deployment that was typically done on smaller data sets with SAS, R, SPSS and so forth, now make that available on all their data. So this predictive deployment enables them to get away from the fact that you have a small data set that you're looking at in the data scientist, in some data scientist environment, but now be able to look at all your data, be able to run your predictive model on all your data in a production environment. So what this enables you to do is really take the best of what you have with your predictive capabilities and predictive modeling tools, but now run those predictive models on a much larger data sets, find those extra additional use cases or edge cases, and therefore take advantage of this technology. So the way this works and the way we've worked with a lot of customers is through a partnership with Cementis, where we can take the models that maybe started off in SAS, SPSS, and so forth, and through the PMML plugin, be able to run that model on Datameer and execute that model on all your data. Now at this point, let's turn to the polling questions again, and want to understand from your perspective, what are you most interested in hearing about? Data quality on Hadoop, interactive data mining, or the predictive deployment? And let's take a look at the results. Okay, and it looks like most of you are interested in interactive data mining on Hadoop. Okay, great. We will spend a little bit more time on that. Okay. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to interact with us either on the Q&A. Also, continue to converse with us over Twitter as with the handle that you see here. So at this point, I'd like to go into the demonstration. And in this demonstration, we'll go through each of the steps that we talked about before, but we'll do it in a particular scenario. And I wanted to just share a little bit of my world, as many of you are analysts, but in my world, being an analyst for marketing, we want to understand a number of things. First of all, we want to understand what is overall website behavior, and that is because website behavior has become increasingly important to being able to drive what we call top of the funnel traffic and top of the funnel leads. And once we get that traffic, we want to understand really what about that traffic converts, because it's great to have traffic. It's great to have people come to your website, but if they're not buying anything, then who really cares, to be very cynical. But that's what we're looking for. So as an analyst, I want to understand where is the traffic coming from, what are the trends, and in particular, what are the trends between website behavior, as you can see in this graph here, in terms of searches and clicks, with the downloads of our trial as well as the leads, and how those leads, say, turn into revenue. And we want to understand, does website behavior affect churn? So what we want to get to is this interactive data mining, which you guys are interested in. An example is seen down here in the lower right-hand corner. You can see a decision tree which shows how the number of website pages visited during a last visit of a person affects whether or not that person will churn or not churn. Now, to do this, we have to go through a number of these steps that we talked about. And the great thing in what I'll show you today is you can do all of that within one tool. So let's go through the first step, and that is being able to integrate. So in the integration process, in this particular example, as an analyst for marketing here at Datameer, I need to pull in data from Google, and in particular Google Analytics, as well as a marketing automation system, Marketo, and CRM or sales-related data from Salesforce. And I'm going to switch over and share my screen with you. Okay. And at this point, Just bear with me as I enlarge the screen so you can see where I am at. Okay. Oops. Let me just move some things over. Okay. All right. Let's hold on. Bear with me as I resize here. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Just trying to get the screen to look perfect for you guys. So what you can see here is the Datameer environment. And starting off with the first step, which is being able to integrate the data. Now I can easily pull in this data, and I can pull in files. I can pull in data that's already in my enterprise through a data link. I can import data. And so if I pull in a file, I can browse to pick up any file. I can set the file type, and so how the file is going to be pulled in. And in our example, I'll show you how to pull in Google Analytics data. And you can see here, I can pull in any number, data from any number of sources through the pre-built connectors that we discussed. One of them is Google Analytics. And go through just a few steps to do this process. For example, authorizing Datameer to get access to my Google account. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these steps in the interest of time. What I'll do is I'll show you what it looks like once I've pulled in this data, and how I can begin to visualize the step around partitioning, which is what a lot of our customers, gaming customers and other ones like Machine Zone, like I described earlier, can do. Oops. I think there's some kind of delay. Okay, there we go. All right, so as you can see, I can pull in data from any day, any set of months, and I can do that visually. And this is something that before, when I was using other tools, I'd have to go and hunt down IT to help me with, and that may take a while. It was a more difficult process. Now, oops, I accidentally did it again. And what I just wanted to quickly show you is how we can really easily bring in this data, see the results, and start to begin to get to the end of it, get to the analysis. So at this point, I want to just go back to where we are in the process, and that is after we've integrated this data, pulled it in, we're now ready for the step in preparing that data. Now, in preparing that data, we talked about being able to profile the data and really understand if the data was ready based on a number of metrics like uniqueness, consistency, accuracy, and so forth. But with Datameer, a lot of our customers also use us to identify outliers, enrich the data, convert the data, and transform the data. And again, in the interest of time today, I won't show you everything, but I will show you a few of the things that we can do so you get an idea of how this can work. And this is where we'll start with data about our customers, including information about how much they've purchased, how long they've been with us, male or female, and so forth. And as I go through and prepare the data, I can see that I'm missing some elements of this data. For example, missing the website data that I'm looking for. So I can add the data, the data that I just got from Google Analytics, easily by selecting the information that I'm looking for, specifying the sheet that I want to pull this data from, and then through either a join or a union, I'll show you union first, specify how I want this data to be organized. Pull in this data, create a union sheet. I can also join the data, and I can create an inner join, an outer join, full outer join. And as you can see, this is all graphical. So this is something that I can see right away, visualize, and not have to bother anybody in IT with necessarily to help me do this. So I can pull over visually the type of information I want to use, in this case both customer ID, and create a join sheet. And I can specify, for example, which columns that I want to join. So as a next step in the process, we want to be able to analyze the data and understand where the patterns are. And in understanding these patterns, I'll go back to my analysis here. And this is where I'll take a look at this data and start to do some simple things like some basic analysis on the data. And that basic analysis is something where I'm leveraging the typical spreadsheet functions that I'm used to using Excel. And so I want to, for example, understand if there is a difference between males and females in the way they spend. So I can pull that information over, group that data, average that information, and select easily which column I want to see the average on. For example, do I want to see it on the total merchandise, total dollar amount in the last 6 months, or something else. So I can do a very simple analysis like this and repeat that for a number of different columns and get a quick view of this data. Now I also can do a little more sophisticated analysis, and this is where the data mining comes in. So I can do something like column dependencies here, where I want to understand the relationships in the data, the correlations between the columns in the data. And I can pull over one or more columns, or I can just pull over, for example, all the columns. And then in this interactive heat map, as you see here, see very quickly where the columns that have the highest correlation are. And that's seen by the darkest green. As you can see, it is, in this case, the number of website pages visited during the last visit. And that's what has the greatest correlation with churn flag, followed by the days since the last purchase and the number of website visits in the last 7 days. So I can see that after pulling in this Google Analytics data that there is indeed a correlation between customers buying or not buying, churning or not churning, and the website pages, number of website pages, and the sort of the website activity that they have. Now that's interesting, but what else can I understand? What else can I do in terms of this interactive data mining? And that's when I can go to this next step here. And this is where I can look at clustering and really identifying groups within the data and be able to analyze these groups to understand if there are certain common patterns and characteristics. Now to do this, I can again drag over multiple columns or the columns that I'm most interested in. And I can specify the number of clusters I'm looking at. For example, I want to look at 2 clusters, 4 or more, so I can specify and interact here with the clustering. And behind the scenes, it's the k-means algorithm that's doing this work, which is great because as an analyst, I don't need to have to understand all of that. But I can also, if I do have a better understanding, then go to the Advanced tab and be able to adjust the number of iterations, number of indicator values, whether or not I want to normalize the numerical columns and be able to have more control over how these clusters are created. Now once I create the cluster sheet, I can see that a cluster ID has been created for each and every record. And this helps me to understand then the trends and the patterns for each of these clusters. Now, this is great, but I want to understand more. And that's where I'll want to go to the decision tree analysis. And in the decision tree analysis, I want to understand what is impacting churn. What is going to cause somebody to leave and stop being a customer of ours or not. And I'm in particular interested in the website. metrics and how the website behavior affects churn. So if I pull over these values, I can see interactively that indeed there is a correlation, and that correlation is specifically around the number 5, or basically the number of website pages visited during the last visit has to be greater than 5 if I hope they do not churn. If it's less than 5 or less than 4.5, then they will churn, and that's an issue. So we understand there is a way of understanding the correlation between the website traffic and whether or not people are churning. So this is fine, but let's go back to where we are in the process. So in this step here, we talked about analysis, and in the analysis, we described how we can do some very basic analysis using the spreadsheet-like function. So this helps a typical Excel user leverage the knowledge that they have and apply it quickly on all their data. We also talked about the interactive data mining, and in particular, how you can leverage clustering, column dependencies, decision tree, and so forth to understand your data better. Now, the next thing that we wanted to go through is the visualization step. And in the visualization step, like we talked about, it's important to be able to quickly create those very attractive visualizations. And as an example, I'll show you the visualizations that we created as a result of the analysis that we did. And as you can see here, let's start with the path analysis, right? So we took the website metrics that we have, and now we've broken it down to understand, all right, where are people coming from, meaning where are they starting, and where are they going to. And so in this map here, you can see the area that has the greatest width means that's where most people are starting from and going to. And the smallest width of lines here are where the least activity is. Now that's fine, but how does that correlate now to other information I'm interested in as an analyst, and what we use at Datameer on a daily basis to figure out where the trends are and where certain activity is not happening or not working out the way we want it to. So in this analysis here, you see that there are a number of things being tracked, and that is the searches and clicks, which are on the website, the downloads, say, of our trials, and how these correspond to leads. Now, like we did before, like we talked about before, we pull this information from various sources, whether it was our website through Google Analytics, through Marketo, which is our marketing automation system, or Salesforce for the later on for the opportunity or sales information. You can also see this for or this activity in terms of web traffic in particular by region geographically. Now, to tie this to the revenue that we talked about and understanding really what's being pulled through to actual transactions, we have done another analysis that pulls together that lead to revenue, part of the cycle. And here you can see on the far left-hand side, our high-value customers, the ones that continue to purchase the most from us, have typically come in through the web. And then that's followed by partner referral and some other things. Now, what's interesting as well is on the right-hand side, which you see here, and that's the probability of winning, and this is again tied to more information from Salesforce about where these opportunities are coming from, and are they influenced by particular people, such as employees, or do they come from a particular partner, and so forth. So this gives us even more insight into where we should focus our marketing efforts. So now, one more thing about the infographics, and that is how you can adjust them and how you can share them. So first of all, in terms of editing these infographics, I could say add a number of infographics here. I could add time series. I could add a tree map. And I can customize how I want this infographic to look. And all it is a matter of dragging over the infographic you want to use, and then filling out the data and the values that you want for what you want to look at. Now, I can also share this information. So like we talked about, we have a credit scoring company that is using this information, using Datameer to share at an aggregate level the customer credit scores with their partners. And I can share this. Clicked the wrong button there. And I can share this in a variety of ways. I can share this through different websites. I can also share it through many different mediums. So people are using Datameer again to share this visualization, and then like Ben had talked about in his flow on the data scientist analysis process, be able to tell that story and get that word out about the results of the analysis. So now let's go back to our process. We have talked about how you can integrate the data, prepare the data, analyze the data, and visualize the data. Now let's discuss how you can actually deploy this analysis. And for this, I want to show a couple of things. First, I want to go back to that predictive deployment that we discussed, where we can take those models that you built in SAS or SAP and so forth and run them on all your data in Datameer. And to do this, you can leverage the plugin that we talked about, and I'll show you how that works right now. And so this is where you can specify, for example, what plugin you want to use. And in this case, for the churn model, I actually was using a churn model that Zementis had provided me. I was able to quickly pull that in, as you see here, and use it on the data that I have and all the really all the data that I have, so that I can get a much more accurate analysis. So I can take the predictive model, run in all our data, and view the results. Now, the next thing I wanted to share with you around this deployment is to address some of the issues that Ben had raised before, and that's around being able to share and reproduce. Now, it's great that I can create this analysis, but what if I want to do this analysis again myself later on, or share this analysis with other people? Now, this is where Datameer's ability to do the sharing comes in. And as you can see here on the far right-hand side, if I click on a specific workbook, I can see when this workbook was last processed, created last, and changed, as well as a description of that workbook, which tells me exactly what's going on in that workbook, which is that this workbook analyzes web user behavior, includes dwell time, click paths, and so forth, and that this workbook is driven by the clickstream preprocessing workbook, which is something that happened before it. Now, when I drill down into, for example, this click path analysis, I can see the dependencies. So I can see where each sheet is in the process, or where I am with each sheet in the process, as well as what came before it and what is going on after it. So at any one time, I have a story that's being seen right in front of me, a visualization right in front of me of how the analysis has changed the data and what's happening to data at each step of the analysis. Now, if I want to share this, I can say, all right, I have a certain group of analysts I want to share it with, and I want to provide them read or write capabilities. I can also share this workbook with a particular person, but this way I have the ability not only of sharing the information, but also specifying who I want to share this information to and how much. So this addresses the issue around collaboration, around reproducibility, and lets me, as an analyst, share what I've done with others in my organization, as well as outside if I want to, but mostly others in our organization. Now, there's one thing I want to show you before we go to the next step, and that is around administration. And so, like we talked about, it's very important to be able to monitor each step of the process. And if I were to look at how my jobs are running, I can look at, for example, a particular job, which you see here, and drill into that, and then be able to view statistics on that job being run and monitor, like we had shown before, each step of the process and see where the activity is. Now, I think, oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong button there. Okay, so I can drill into a particular job that you see. And as you can see, I drill into a particular job, and then there's a little bit of delay, sorry, and then go into a view of the graphics and the statistics in general. Now, the last thing that I wanted to do is talk about how you can deploy your solution and share and get the best from other Datameer customers. So for that, I want to shift to another topic. So what we talked about here in terms of reproducibility is how you can share your workbooks internally, right? So we talked about how you can document what's going on with each workbook here, share that workbook internally in terms of the groups that you want to share this. Do you want to have full result sharing or not? But now I want to discuss how you can share with a larger group and really take the best learnings that other Datameer customers have seen, and that is through our app market. And so with the app market, what you have bundled in are a number of really pre-built applications. So again, as an analyst here at Datameer for marketing, I got really excited when I saw that there was these website traffic pre-built applications, as well as these website referrals and website visitors, because that was the stuff that I wanted to know right away. And instead of having to start from scratch, like I showed you, I could just immediately load up these applications and start viewing the results. So I'll show you some of these results right now. So all I did was load in the app. So all you do is click on one of these buttons, right? Like install, and then it'll start to install. And when I did that, I was able to see things very quickly, like where the referrals for a website came from and the ranking, right? The visits and visitors and bounced by social network source. I mean, this was just awesome, because this is stuff that we need to understand in order to increase our website traffic. And then I could also understand where the highest website traffic was. And so again, as someone who works within marketing at Datameer, this was exciting for me, because I could see, on the website, the pages and the places that people went to the most included the usual places like the product, company, and Datameer.com. But there was also this Big Data Analytics ebook, which I wrote last year, and I was very excited to see that it actually got quite a bit of uptake here. So you can see very quickly, in a few seconds, how your website's performing, and that was largely because I was benefiting from the community at large. So the community at large provided these applications, so I could see this information really quickly in these infographics, and shared these infographics, shared these applications on the app market, so that no matter which industry I'm in, no matter what kind of use case I'm trying to address, I have a starting point. I have a template to accelerate my use case analysis. So at this point, I want to hand it back over, or actually wrap up and then hand it back over to Ben. Before we do that, we have a polling question, and I'm going to push that last polling question to you. And this is just for us to understand which part of this seminar did you find most interesting, so that we can improve these types of webinars for you in the future. So if you could just enter in, was it around the lean analytics process and metrics? Was it the technology discussion or your demo? And so to just understand where you guys are, it was a demonstration, so thank you very much for giving us that feedback. We will continue to do these demonstrations, and we encourage you to follow up with us to view more detailed demonstrations, as what I showed you today was just a very small sliver of what the product can provide. So what I'd like to do now is wrap up very quickly and return to what we started with in terms of what Ben had mentioned as the challenges in the data scientist workflow. So he discussed, and I shared or summarized, that first it was the issue around multiple tools and the ability to reproduce results, and then finally the fact that it was the tools were not designed for the business. So I hope you've seen in today's session an approach and through Datameer's technology how you can address this entire workflow in one tool. You can reproduce these results through collaboration and tracking and the sharing that we talked about with the workbooks and the way they're set up, as well as with the app market. And then finally, the ease of use. So as a business person, as an analyst for Datameer, I'm living testament that anyone can use this product and use it happily. So at this point, I would like to turn it back to Ben and share the questions or go through some of the questions that we were getting from the audience. Ben, back to you.
Hi. Thank you, Karen. We've got a lot of interesting questions from the audience. I think the first set of questions has to do with scale. Let me just kind of group them all together. But basically, people are curious about scale. So one attendee is asking, can I load 100 gigabytes of data into a workbook to do analysis? And then another attendee is wondering, well, does this spreadsheet interface really scale to large data sets? Is some kind of sampling being used? And then finally, another attendee is curious. Your demo seems to be run really fast, especially some of the analytics like the clustering. So, is it because you're using small data, or will this product scale and feel just as snappy and fast to much larger data sets?
Okay, great. So great questions, and thank you, Ben, for moderating this. I want at this time to introduce Henning here from Datameer. He is our resident data scientist and can explain from his point of view as well as his experience how we can scale with Datameer.
Yeah, hi, this is Henning. So first of all, yes, totally correctly observed that we do use a sampling in the spreadsheet. So what happens once you integrate your data in Hadoop, you get all the data into your Hadoop. When you open that up in the spreadsheet, then you see a small sample of that data, and you lay out your analysis on that sample. And once you're done with that, then you click a button and say, all right, now execute that analysis on the full set of data, and that is where it will scale. So what happens is all the functions, all the algorithms, every single tiny step of your analysis gets translated into a native pure Java MapReduce code, gets sent to your Hadoop and gets executed there on the full data set. And yeah, when you have seen in the spreadsheet that the algorithms were really fast, like the k-means, for example, then this is because you're operating on the samples to get an instant feedback, to have it interactive, visually interactive. But again, once you click the button and say now execute it on the full data set, then it is all Hadoop MapReduce, pure native MapReduce, and runs on the full data set on the cluster. And that, depending on how large your data is and how large your cluster is, can take a minute or can take a day. But if it takes a day, then you just add another, I don't know, 100 nodes to your cluster, and then it really scales.
So a related question is, someone was asking, to your point about MapReduce, that in their experience, Hadoop can be slow for computationally intensive workloads. So, how tied is Datameer to MapReduce as an execution engine? Are there plans to point this user interface to other execution engines like Apache Spark?
So at this point today, we implement all steps of the analysis, like every single function, every part of the algorithm ourselves by MapReduce, and we basically compile a graph of MapReduce jobs from the workbook, and we optimize that graph and really make sure it gets executed in the most optimal way. But yes, it's totally right. MapReduce is not optimal for certain kinds of algorithms. But in my opinion, the whole point is really that storage and compute are very inexpensive, and that's the benefit of MapReduce, of Hadoop. And that's where, even though the implementation of, let's say, an iterative algorithm on Hadoop, on MapReduce, is certainly not as optimal as if you would do everything on a small data set in memory. But since it's Hadoop, you can easily add storage and compute to scale. So this is how we solve that.
So some of the attendees are asking how customizable are some of the analytics. So for example, Karen demonstrated correlation in k-means. Is that something people can customize, meaning can they plug in their own algorithms or tweak the algorithm?
Yeah, so first of all, what Datameer always tries to do is make it very, very simple to use for business users. So we intentionally make it look very simple and hide the complexity. But for each of the algorithms, for example, there's also an advanced tab where you can, if you know what's going on, if you understand the algorithm, actually tweak the parameters a little more. We also get feedback that in those advanced tabs, people would like to have even more options to adjust. So for example, in the clustering algorithm we use the Euclidean distance under the hoods. And this, for example, is not customizable today, but we can totally imagine, for example, to have in the advanced tab like checkboxes or radio buttons to choose between different distance functions here, for example. And this is also another example is in the correlation matrix, where you see how your columns are dependent on each other, how they relate to each other. The measure we use there is mutual information, and we can totally make other measures available, like Pearson correlation. So that will be more customizable. Today, for this initial release of Smart Analytics that is currently available, again, we intend to make it very simple, usable for the business user. In the future, as we iterate on that, we will add more and more possibilities to tweak it.
And to add to that, in addition to the Smart Analytics, we have the ability to bring in any predictive model that you've created before through the PMML plugin, like I showed at the very end. So that is also another option in addition to the Smart Analytics that Datameer offers.
So there's, again, going back to this whole, so there's more questions about the execution engine, right? So from what I gather from your previous answer, there's no plans to point Datameer to other execution engines like Spark. So I guess just verify that. And then secondly, the other question is, someone is asking, can you actually execute some of these from outside the Datameer interface, let's say like from an UCI workflow?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question and then hand it over to Henning for the second question. But just to reiterate the point about Spark and the newer technologies that are execution engines that are out there, Datameer is number one focused on their customers and how their customers are using Hadoop in these new technologies. So we are making sure that every step of the way that we build our products on the most proven technology. And as a result, our customers will be the most successful. So we are not saying that Spark is totally out of the question or any new technology is out of the question. We are just moving in lockstep with the market as these new technologies are proven.
Yeah, the other question about how easy it is to integrate with other tools around Datameer, I would say there's